Hello, beautiful human beings. Today I want to explain how processing creates healing. Processing is feeling and experiencing deeply. And this is what helps to integrate the past and the present. So it takes a tremendous courage to really feel, to really experience either those moments that have hurt us in the past or those feelings that are incredibly difficult to bear, like pain and grief and sadness. But it takes the feeling them to have them find their place inside of us. Here's what happens. When we feel something deeply, we're letting go of all the barriers that are in the way. We're facing our fear. When we face our fear, something incredible happens. Now we're not being chased anymore by that feeling, by that experience. Where we run into trouble is when we don't go deep enough. When we don't go deep enough into the feeling, we might actually get stuck in a cycle of sort of feeling it, but never really resolving it, trying to run away from it, but it's still kind of there chasing us all the time. We can only ever really resolve pain or sadness or anger or any of the other feelings by allowing ourselves to feel them deeply, to create a relationship, because they're trying to tell us something. And we can only get to that lesson, we can only get to that insight when we allow them to speak to us loud and clear. And yes, it's very intense. It is very intense when we allow ourselves to feel pain all the way or fear all the way. But here's how it creates healing. While we're trying to run away from the past, from the injuries that we felt, or from the pain of our present moment, we spend a lot of energy trying to keep those thoughts and feelings at bay. And we cannot only keep certain feelings at bay. When we decide to keep anger at bay, we also don't experience joy anymore or satisfaction to the same extent. It's kind of like, when you think about when you get your heart tested, and there is the sheet that comes out, and there is a line, that's the midline, and then there's zigzags going up and down. Now, if you imagine that the positive feelings are above the line and the negative feelings are below the line, if you try and diminish the negative feelings, those big sharp points are the negative feelings, and you shrink them back because you don't want to feel them, what happens is that also the positive feelings will now shrink back also closer to the middle. So when we're cutting ourselves off from feelings on the negative side, we will also now experience a great reduction of the positive feelings. Well, you can probably imagine that that is not helpful. So if you want to feel happier, if you want to feel more satisfied, if you want to feel more fulfilled, you have to be courageous enough to feel all the other feelings just as intensely. It kind of goes hand in hand. So either we shrink our feelings, all of them, or we expand them, all of them. That's number one. When you allow yourself to feel the negative feelings fully, you will start to heal because you're also allowing the positive feelings to be there more. Number two is when we allow ourselves to feel deeply, those feelings shift, they actually transform. Something happens. They're not all of a sudden as big and scary as they were before. They will actually change. They will lighten. They will become less intense, they will shift. And so now there is less you need to run away from. There is less to be feared. And what we thought was so big and scary is now not so big and scary anymore. That also creates a healing in the sense of now is there's more calm. There's more calm and there's more peace in our body and our mind. And there is a transformation that happens all on its own. When we are going deeply into sadness, we can actually find joy inside of the sadness. So now, something that was too unbearable to feel has shifted into a more neutral position. Now it holds both. It actually holds sadness and joy at the same time. It's like our feelings want to be a part of us. They need to find a place to rest within our body and within our spirit. And when we are allowing ourselves to feel them deeply, that's what happens. They settle down. They find their place. It's actually quite difficult to describe. I've never heard anyone talk about it before, so I'm having a hard time finding my own words for this. There's a settling down. There's a feeling of coming to be at home with ourselves. The feelings of finding their home, and we're also finding a home within ourselves. The other thing that happens through this processing and the feeling of feelings is that we develop a trust with ourselves. That in itself is a huge part of healing, finding trust again in our own ability to bear, to survive, and to be present with who we are. This is where the healing also happens, is when we feel we get to be with ourselves. We get to understand ourselves. We get to trust ourselves. And that is the healing of that breach of, when we are really badly hurt, we don't know who we are anymore. That is excruciating. And through the feeling of feelings, through the processing of who we are in this moment, through allowing to be who we are in this moment, we are bridging again with ourselves, and we get to know ourselves again. We get to understand again who we are. We get to feel who we are. We're getting a new sense of who we are, which maybe we haven't had for a really long time. All of that creates healing in a huge way. Now, this is where the themes that I've talked about are starting to overlap. This is where insight is coming in as well, and wisdom, because when we allow ourselves to feel and experience where we are right now, even if it is painful, at the end of it, there is an insight. There's always an insight into either the reason, a really deep reason for why we're feeling the way we are, and with that comes a really clear understanding of the situation that we're processing. There is a magic there that can only be experienced. You might actually experience that what you feared is the opposite of what is true. You might experience that what you feared is exactly what you feared. And because now you've faced it, those feelings are not in the way anymore for you to see clearly. I've led a client through this just yesterday, where there was a lot of confusion about which decision to make. And through processing just the feelings, the fear, the hopes, the anger, these feelings were allowed to find their place in her body, in her mind, and in her spirit. They settled down. They weren't trying to get her attention anymore because she paid really close attention to them. They became really quiet. And now she was able to see her situation in a very new way, very, very clearly. because she wasn't afraid to look at it anymore. And she could see the path forward for her very clearly. So this is where it's starting to overlap a little bit. This is where insight is coming into it through the feeling of feelings, through the processing. So this is where I find most people get stuck in the healing process. There is such a huge amount of fear to feel even more pain, to feel even more disappointed, to see the truth that is painful even more clearly. But I've never found anyone yet who was able to move forward powerfully and fast and directly unless they surrender to first seeing where they're at and where they were in the past and feeling and processing all of that. It's a huge shift that can happen when you dare to go to this place. It is the biggest shift, the most powerful shift anyone can make, because when we're experiencing where we are very deeply, something shifts automatically. We don't have to try hard to change something on the outside anymore. The us being able to bear, to accept, and to witness those feelings and those situations we went through changes something inside of us at the core. Again, this is really difficult to explain because you have to experience it. So I hope this helps. This is why the workshops that I'm teaching, called Radical Self-Love, are so important, because not only is it a way of embracing ourselves and radically loving ourselves, it is also a radical love and a radical acceptance of where we are at this moment, what we're feeling and what we're thinking. And so radical self-love is an immensely powerful tool for processing and integration. So if you have a chance, find me and sign up for those free workshops. Goodbye.